it's Jessie from b.a.r.e Flower Farm, and I wish I could say that I grew these flowers, but I didn't. So if you've been following along, you know that I've had a lot of deer pressure in my flower field. And for those of you who don't know me, my name's Jessie. I am a first-year cut flower farmer in Zone 6B in central New Jersey. And I moved to this house literally about 3 months ago now. And 2 weeks after we moved in, we started preparing our yard. So our yard was complete grass. We loved the lot because it was relatively flat. It was cleared, just grass. So we rented a sod lifter, took out the sod. We did not till, but we also put in compost, wood chip aisles. And then finally, this past weekend, we got up a deer fence. So between the time that I actually started putting plants in the ground to getting a deer fence, I had probably about a month and a half where deer were just, it was like Russian roulette. I'd wake up and I would say, oh my God, did they eat anything? And unfortunately, a couple of days before I finalized the deer fence, they did their most damage. So I had really no blooms for this Sunday's market. I also sell soap, so I would have had some other product to sell, but a viewer basically saw my problem on YouTube and reached out. She's a local grower and asked me, hey, do you need blooms? I was supposed to sell to a florist, but she's had some delays. So I have all these stems, do you want to buy them off of me? And I said, yes, please. I would love that, especially since you're local. So for me, it's all about minimizing that carbon footprint since most of the flowers that people buy are international. So for me, there's no ego or pride around I have to grow it to sell it. This is a bigger mission that I'm trying to tackle, right? Which is sourcing more sustainable blooms for my community. So, it was a no-brainer for me. But in this episode, I want to talk about pricing. So, this comes from the standpoint of I am a grower myself. I obviously want to pay someone an adequate price that I would feel comfortable with. But I want to talk a little bit about, how we got to the pricing arrangement that we got to, and a little bit of, we'll call it out of the box thinking. Because I think for a lot of growers, your question might be, well, how do I sell my stems if it's not at a farmer's market? Or if it's not to, on a roadside stand. Let's say I want to sell to a florist, I want to sell to a shop, I want to sell to someone like me who has a farmer's market commitment but doesn't have any flowers. So this video is less about selling to a florist, but more selling to, let's say, a cafe, maybe a little shop that wants to carry your flowers, or maybe to someone like me. We're not talking about high volume. We're talking about you're selling maybe anywhere from 5 to 20 bouquets at a given time. So let me show you what these bouquets look like. You got a view, but I'm gonna show you my favorite bouquet because this is totally my jam for a color palette. I love the oranges mixed with the deep corals, mixed with, yellow, purple, maroon. This bouquet is this is me. I digress, but this bouquet has a lot of really, really good stems. And so we've got a few stems of lily. We've definitely got at least 6 snapdragon in here. And we even have, I would say there's 4 ranunculus, some sweet William. This bouquet, I feel if a florist were to sell it, would be upwards of $30 to $35. Realistically, I am not going to get $30 to $35 at my farmer's market. And I know this because I actually talked to a former vendor who sold flowers at that price point, and it was really hard for her to move flowers. She ultimately did not sell at that market because she felt like she was not really able to sell at a price point that made it worth her time. So that was really valuable information for me because it's I'm not growing Lysianthus that's gonna, take months and months for it to bloom. I'm gonna grow things like sunflowers, zinnias, dahlias that are workhorses and allow me to sell at that $15 to $20 price point. So a bouquet like this, when I had the conversation with this grower, I said, look, I am going to be selling bouquets at the $15 to $20 price point. Make me bouquets that are at that price point, and I will pay you $10 for a $15 bouquet. And if you give me a $20 bouquet, I will pay you $14. So I would net $5 for a $15 bouquet and $6 for a $20 bouquet. And so this gets into a bit of that out of the box thinking, because I think a lot of people see wholesale sheets. They think, oh, I can only sell stems by the bunches. Like, what is a bunch? And yes, I could have bought bunches of 10 from her. I could have, bought a bucket from her. But, for me, I was also thinking, hey, like if I buy bunches from her, I need to spend time to arrange and everything. She also enjoys putting together these bouquets. So a win-win situation would be, why don't I just flat out buy bouquets from you? I'll pay a little bit more. I will save on my time. You get to practice and, make these bouquets. It's kind of like an expression of creativity for yourself. And then we'll go from there. So, I'll be honest. I think when I said I'll pay you $10 for a $15 bouquet, she was pretty thrilled. And, upon talking to her, so Jess, you're probably watching this right now, but, upon talking to her, she said that, she has interest from like a local cafe. They'd be selling the bunches at $15 too, and they wanted $7.50. So let's talk a little bit about what reasonable sounds like. And, this is going to look different for everyone depending on the area and location that you live in. So living in the state of New Jersey, you probably know that New Jersey is a very densely populated state. And even though I live in an area that is considered more farmland, we have a lot of people here. I mean, like, my town is probably like 30,000 people. The next town over is like 50,000 people. So we've got enough of a population to support multiple growers and, people who want to sell bouquets, right? So that's very different than if you lived in a rural area where there's, a couple thousand people. You really need to find an outlet for, traffic and that kind of stuff, right? It might look a little bit different. But in this situation, I am going to be at a farmer's market. I've said that I've committed to being at this farmer's market every other weekend. And so for me, if I know I can move a $15 bouquet, for like getting it for $10, that means that the grower is keeping 67% of that $15, and I am making about 33% off of that. Now, to me, as a grower, that feels fair, because if you think about it, as a grower, you're probably starting the flowers from seed. You are transplanting them. You are watering them. You are fertilizing them. You are making sure that they don't get eaten by God knows what. That is typically at least a 3 to 5 month turnaround. So it's a high risk and it's a long-term plan. So this is why when people, sell their blooms wholesale for like 50%, I actually think that's unreasonable, unless if you're selling to a grocery store where you're doing a lot of volume. And that is, in all of my research, the only time where I see bouquets getting sold at half their price to the grocery store retailer, and sometimes that's even on consignment. So for me as a grower, what I would find fair is it needs to be above 50% and it can't be consignment. Consignment basically means that if I sell you the blooms and they don't sell out, as a grower, I'm at risk for taking them back. Like, that is completely unfair, but it is a model that actually exists out in the world. So I feel like as a grower, you should know that there are definitely situations out there where people are not taking consignment as an option as a grower. So I've seen anywhere really from the grower keeping about 2/3 of the total cost of the bouquet up to 80%. Now, I was just listening to a podcast with Lisa Mason Ziegler. She had Nicole from Flower Hill Farm on there. And Nicole was saying that there's a local shop in her town who is basically going to only keep 20% of sales, allowing Nicole to keep 80% of her bouquet sales. And so that, Lisa even agreed, was a really great deal, because obviously, Nicole doesn't have to stand there to sell the flowers. She has an outlet. They seem to be selling out every single time. So, there's no mention of consignment there. So, if it is a $20 bouquet, that means Nicole's selling it to them at $16 and the retailer is earning $4. I also know from a tulip course that I took where they are forcing tulips for specialty bouquets, they are selling wholesale to their local, it doesn't seem like it's a big chain grocery store, but it is like a marketplace store. They're selling it to that store for $11.50, and then that store is selling it for $16.99. So they're nowhere near that 50% mark. So if you get a cafe or wherever that is trying to, shortchange you by saying, I want it to be consignment and I want 50%, I think you have the ability to push back on that. Now, that being said, I think that, if you were to sell to let's say a restaurant or a cafe, right, where they're putting it on tables and not necessarily reselling it, that's a completely different topic. But if they are planning on literally taking a bouquet that you've made, that not only have you taken the time to grow, but also wrap and make into arrangement and resell it, it needs to be above 50% in my view. Because, in this case, she sold this to me for $10, since all of these were being priced at the $15 mark. She, I even think that she's undercharging here, Jess. Do you hear that? You're undercharging a bit. So, we'll talk more next time about just making sure that you're getting paid the adequate amount in terms of when you're selling these arrangements. But it is one of those things where I think that, we as growers tend to potentially underprice because we're, one, not confident that our blooms are as good as someone else growing from Colombia or wherever it is they're importing it from. Or two, we think, okay, let me just test it out and see. And I'm sure a lot of you have read online, but when we underprice ourselves, we also underprice other small growers out there who are really doing this for a living. So that's why it's really important for us to be more deliberate in the pricing. And, it doesn't mean that you can't sell a $5 bouquet or a $10 bouquet. It just means that when you sell a $5 bouquet, it needs to be worth $5, that you're not selling a $5 bouquet that is actually worth $15. So, right away for me, there is no $5 bouquet unless if I've got really, really short stems that were gonna go into the compost anyway. But anytime if I have, decent stem length, I'm arranging something, I'm spending my time, the bouquet has to be above $5 for it to be worth my time. And this seller, she has a bed of ranunculus right now, and they're kind of they're suffering the heat. And she said to me, look, there was a point in time where I was like, should I put them out in the road stand and potentially, not get the value they're worth? Or should I keep them in the bed where I can wake up every single day and look at them and that brings me joy? And I totally get where she's coming from, right? Because at that point, roadside stand customers probably don't appreciate what a ranunculus is, how it should be priced. So you're probably pricing a little bit below than what it should be priced at. And then, you're really not making a lot of money, especially if you're going to have to put time into arranging it. So in that case, it makes total sense to me to forego it and, enjoy the blooms every single day. So this video is going to pick up after the market. The problem is it's supposed to thunderstorm all day on Sunday, so I realistically don't know how many people are going to come. But regardless, I'm just really, really happy that, so I got 12 bouquets. So here's the other bucket of blooms. I mean, they're just absolutely gorgeous. It was really cool to see her little setup. She's growing on, I think she said she had about 3/4 of an acre, but she's not growing on all 3/4. And you can see how many blooms she's producing. And that was one of the things we were talking about. It's a misnomer to think that you need acres and acres of land to grow a lot of flowers. But, she's producing so much on a relatively small piece of land here. So, I think the takeaways here are, one, think outside the box in terms of how you could sell, especially, selling bouquets. And if you are to sell bouquets, make sure you are pricing them adequately. Go above the 50% mark for yourself. So I think anywhere from 2/3 to 80% is really reasonable. I think 80% is probably really difficult for us to achieve unless if you got consistent volume and you're established and people actually know who you are. I think as a first year grower, expecting something between the 60 and 65% mark in terms of what you can keep when you sell a bouquet should be reasonable and doable. All right, so I will see you in 2 days, hopefully giving you a Successful update on being able to sell the majority of these bouquets. Hey guys, I lied. It is not market day. It is actually just a couple of hours from when I last filmed, but I actually want to take this opportunity to really hammer home this notion of pricing your bouquets correctly. And so I'm gonna preface this by saying that I did talk to the grower when I was picking up the bouquets about thrips being in the Snapdragon, because I told her my Snapdragons were completely overtaken by thrips, and I was wondering if she had thrips, and last second she's harvesting and there's thrips. So we agreed that she made 12 bouquets, I would pay for 10 bouquets, and then I would use my discretion to see whether or not I wanted to keep the Snapdragon in the bouquet. Unfortunately, I had to really compost nearly all of the Snapdragon. There were a few that were still usable. I had some in the garden, so it was totally fine. I'm bringing this up not because, I'm talking about growers selling me something with thrips. I'm bringing this up because the bouquets before were so loaded with so many stems that doing this was easy. I am gonna say that she was selling me bouquets that I should have sold at close to $25 mark. So what I did in the past 2 hours was I redistributed the focal flowers along with the fillers. And let me show you a few examples of what I have. Now I would say varying degrees of, or how to say it? I would say realistically, I think I have bouquets that range from $15 to $20. So let me give you an example. This is a bouquet where you can see there's one lily here, 2 lily here. There's some larkspur, there's some feverfew, nigella pods, status. This lily here has two flowers, and this one has 1. This is really worth $15 to $17 in my view. So, a really good value for $15. Before, this bouquet would have had 5 more Snapdragon, and it was just it looked beautiful, but it was worth more than $15. So another example is this guy over here. So, lily over here, some Snapdragon, feverfew, Sweet William and stuff. But at the end of the day, this one is probably worth even under $15. It was just the way in terms of the number of stems that I had left. But at the end of the day, you bet your butt that a florist would sell this for more than $15. So I have no guilt. Let me show you one that whoever gets this one is really hit the lottery in terms of the flower lottery, because this one by stem count, you can see there's only 7 stems. It's pretty thin compared to, especially let me show you this one. Which one? This one has a lot more stems, right? So, by stem count, this one looks like it has less stems. But let me bring this down for you. This has a crazy lily stem. This stem, one stem of lily has 9 lily heads. So I put a Snapdragon here, some feverfew, 2 larkspur, and 1 nigella. This is worth over $15 because of this one lily stem alone. This one realistically, I think should be priced at $20. I'm gonna price them all at $15 just because it's easier for me to sell at the market. I brought this one up before, from a quantity perspective, a lot more stems than the last one. There's some ranunculus in here. Let me take the sleeve off of it. There's 2 lilies, 3 ranunculus, some Sweet William, some larkspur, some status. And this one, is an adequate $15 bouquet. I will show you one more here. This one there's ranunculus in here. There's a really big stem of white ranunculus in here, yellow ranunculus, some Snapdragon, some feverfew, Sweet Williams. Again, another bouquet that is worth $15. Just for kicks, let's do one more. This one here, you can see quite a few stems in here. Bring it down. We've got quite a bit of nigella, larkspur, ranunculus in the middle. We got a lily here. We got some Sweet William on the side, feverfew, also worth $15 because this one, the lily, has 2 heads and it has a good focal ranunculus. So you're seeing here that where, for me, $15 is 3 to 4 focals plus some filler to really round it out. I mean, this is gonna look great in a vase for $15 for all the variety. So again, you know, making this video because I think a bunch of us might look at a bouquet like the one that I had before, this one, and say, I wouldn't pay $15 for it. Well, guess what? You may not be your own target customer, because I can guarantee you there is someone willing to pay $15 for this. It may not be you, it may not be your parents, but someone out there is. And, you know, when we price low, like I said before, you know, we're potentially screwing over people who are doing this for a living. And this was like a lesson that I had learned with soap, because when I first started my soap company, it was all natural soap. I was pricing at $5 a bar. My parents were like, you're crazy. Who would pay $5 a bar? And at that time, I was actually pricing it low, and I wouldn't even pay $5 a bar. Over time, I actually became my own target customer. I now value paying a little bit extra for things that are sustainably made, things that are made in the US, things that are all natural, things that I can trust, right? So, you know, there's a premium that certain people are willing to pay, including local cut flowers, right? This one is grown by American labor on American soil, no pesticides, you know, there's no synthetic fertilizer being used, right? So all of the inputs are inherently going to be higher, and therefore you are going to have to price this higher. Do not compete against Trader Joe's and grocery store flowers. Those are flowers that are grown abroad with cheaper labor. They're grown using synthetic inputs in a greenhouse where things are scaled. So it's two completely different types of commodity products. So get into the habit of making sure that you're looking at how many stems are going into a bouquet, how much is each of these stems worth. If I were to price this at a wholesale point, what does that look like? If I multiply it by 2, you know, does it get me close to where I'm pricing it at commercially? And then you have a good answer there. So hopefully this part of the video was helpful for you. So we're at the market right now. It's pretty miserable outside. It's raining, but the rain's supposed to clear up. So we'll see how the traffic looks. But in the meantime, this is how the booth setup looks. We're 50 minutes in, and luckily the rain has stopped. Sold one bouquet with my new stock, actually, because it smelled so good. She really liked it. And then we sold 2 candles. So really around $50 so far. And hopefully the rain holds up, because I already see the traffic picking up. So we'll see what happens in the next 3 hours. So it's 11:40 right now. We're about an hour and 40 minutes into the market, and I have 3 bouquets left, which means I've sold 7. So pretty happy, especially given the raining weather so far. We've got just a little bit over an hour left, and we are sold out of the bouquets. We've actually been sold out for the past half hour, and we're at $350 in terms of sales. So trying to see if we could break the $400 mark today with another hour left. All right, so it is after the market. I am actually coming into the flower field to check on a few things, but our total sales were $452. So for a rainy day where the market manager actually called me this morning to ask if I was still coming, I didn't even know I had a choice. That's pretty good, because my second market, I made a little bit over $500. Now I didn't have as many bouquets. So, you know, this is one of those market days where I really didn't make much money. You know, it's kind of like you make a bit for labor, you make a bit to just like a little bit of extra profit, but it's nothing that's going to move the needle. And that's okay, because one of the things that I did do different is I've only been to 3 markets, because I had to sit one out for COVID. And for each of those markets, I priced the bouquets a little bit differently, just to test the market to see what it would look like. So I ended up selling the $15 bouquets at $17, because I felt like $15 was undercharging it. And I put the bouquets into this mini fridge that I had without realizing that the top of the mini fridge inside didn't have a cover. So unfortunately, some of the stems that I put in got a little bit freezer burn. So I ended up having to discard a few stems. Luckily, I had some stock that was in bloom, like a straw flower too. So I was able to make some bouquets using, I was able to salvage some of the bouquets. So those bouquets came out a bit shorter, and there were 3 of them that I sold at the $12 mark. And that was more than reasonable. It was just that some of the stems look like that they were going to have a shorter vase life than what I would have liked. So that's why I priced it at $12. So I sold out of all the flowers, again, hammering home the point that I think I really do have a local market at this farmer's market for flowers. So, you know, at the end of the day, I told the grower who I bought these flowers from, I was like, you know, I'm not buying from you to make money. I'm buying from you to let people know that at this market I have blooms. I want to support a local grower, you know, because if I support her, it also contributes to my mission around the sustainability piece. And then I also want to just make sure that I have, like, I'm spending my time at the market wisely, right? Because at the end of the day, unless if I'm doing like $1,000+ days, I'm really not making that much money. So I need to be learning stuff from this. So if I don't have any blooms to sell, then I can't be learning. So what I am excited for is in 2 weeks, I should definitely have sunflowers, barring, you know, like squirrels, birds, or whatever eating them if I don't have a chance to harvest them. But, you know, assuming that the weather actually holds up, and it's not like thunder or whatever, I feel like I should have a decent market because I'll actually have a decent amount of blooms next time. So I'm pretty excited. I hope this video was helpful for you. So stay tuned as to what happens with my sunflowers.